Halfland, an ahistorical prehistory. The Battle of Geitsbyn. In the year 41 of the Common Reckoning, following his victory at the Battle of Nygard, Holden, king of the dwarves of the Dark Hills, marched at the head of 400 dwarves into the farmlands between South Vale and the Silver Stream, looting and burning as he went. The only opposition to Holden was provided by Norby, who had been waging a guerrilla war against Holden for many years, ambushing small groups of Holden's dwarves before disappearing back into the trees. Holden knew that, in aggregate, his force was more powerful than that available to Norby. He kept his army together so that Norby could not defeat him piece by piece. If there was to be a clash of arms, then Holden's host would be the stronger. But Norby was not prepared to let Holden pillage the country without resistance, and so it was that as Holden's army marched along a small river, up a wooded valley, towards the village of Geitsbyn, he found Norby waiting for him. Norby had around 100 unarmoured crossbow dwarves and 150 armoured spear dwarves. He also had a contingent of around 100 halflings, diversely armed with spears, bows and slings. He placed his crossbow dwarves and halflings in the woods on each side of the valley, and his spear dwarves within the village, which was situated by a ford. Holden's forces marched towards Geitsbyn, with the river on their right, 150 gambeson-clad crossbow dwarves screening the front and left flank of a column of 250 armoured spear dwarves. Holden's dwarves were expecting an easy afternoon, pillaging and burning the homes of defenceless farmers. They first realised that they might be mistaken when Norby's two groups of crossbow dwarves unleashed a storm of crossbow bolts from the trees on the far side of the river, which laid low several of the crossbow dwarves in Holden's van. The comrades of the fallen dwarves moved to the water's edge and started to loose bolts back at the first group of their adversaries. And Holden's dwarves heard the call of Norby's horn echoing down the valley as he led his spear dwarves from their concealed position in the village up to the walls of the surrounding fields, where they formed a defensive line. Holden urged his column of spear dwarves forward, allowing the group of crossbow dwarves that had been shielding his left flank to move across behind his spear dwarves, closing the range so they could shoot at the second group of Norby's dwarves in the woods. As they moved into position, several of them fell, pierced by the bolts of Norby's dwarves, but the remainder shot back, causing casualties in return. And although Norby's dwarves were sheltered by the trees, Holden's dwarves demonstrated the quality of their marksmanship and eliminated them as a threat. Holden's victorious group of crossbow dwarves now moved upstream toward their colleagues who had been in the van of Holden's army, to support them in their ongoing crossbow battle with Norby's first group of crossbow dwarves. But Norby's dwarves proved to have the better aim in this exchange, and many of Holden's crossbow dwarves were killed or grievously injured. And still Holden urged his spear dwarves forward, on toward the village, leaving the crossbow battle behind him. At this point, Norby's horn once more echoed down the valley, and 100 halflings charged out of the forest on Holden's left. A shower of arrows and slingshot clattered against the shields and mail of Holden's spear dwarves, but one slingshot did not strike armour. It passed beneath the brim of Holden's helmet, through his left eye and deep into his brain. And Holden fell dead. Holden's spear dwarves wavered, and now the halfling archers and slingers moved closer, continually loosing missiles at them. And on the other bank of the river, Norby's remaining crossbow dwarves moved upstream, switching their attention from Holden's crossbow dwarves to his spear dwarves. This was too much for Holden's dwarves. They did not break and flee, but they did turn and march in good order from the field, bearing Holden's body with them. Norby's dwarves and halflings were running low on ammunition, and did not pursue them. Thus ended the Battle of Geitsbyn, and thus ended Holden's reign as king of the dwarves of the Dark Hills.